Today I'm going to take a little deeper look at one of the verses in John chapter 11 in the story of Jesus, Martha, Mary, and the raising of their brother Lazarus. In the middle section, in verses 28 to 37 and verse 33, we hear the following. When Jesus saw her weeping, that's Mary, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved. And that word that's translated moved can be translated as agitated. Some translations even say angered. But that agitation, that being disturbed and deeply moved, why is that? Well, it could be at seeing the pain that death causes. It could be that Jesus just seeing the pain of his friends and the struggle that they're going through at the loss of their brother and the mourners who are there, Jesus cares. And we worship a God in Christ who can identify with all of our feelings. He left everything in heaven, came to earth, was born of Mary, is living as a human being like you and like myself, and he feels the pain of grief and loss. And in the scope of what is happening to Jesus, it's also important to remember that by the time this chapter ends and this story ends, the Passover is near. And it's important to highlight again that John refers to the Jews, like the Jews who came with her. And remember, Jesus was Jewish. John, who's recalling this gospel, is Jewish, but it's being written at a time when there's been a split between the Jews who believed that Jesus was the one who came down from heaven to give life to the world and those who didn't. So that's the reason for that distinction. But it is very near to the Passover. It's very near to what we call Holy Week. And so it's not a surprise that Jesus is deeply moved, because with Lazarus' own death, there's also a foreshadowing of what lies ahead for himself. When you're going through a difficult time in your own life, I think it's really helpful to remember that Jesus wept with his friends. And Paul would later write that we weep with those who weep. We rejoice with those who rejoice. And that's part of our task as Christians. For our friends and our family members who may be walking through the valley of the shadow of death, our task is to walk with them even when there simply are no words we can speak other than we're so terribly, terribly sorry. But it's helpful to remember that when our hearts are breaking, God's heart is always the first heart to break.